15,000 prisoners, 30,000 eyes. One order. That is how the legend begins. But the legend is too small for what really happened. A line of defeated men stretches for kilometers. Out of every 199 have been blinded. The 100th keeps a single eye not as mercy, but as utility. He is there to guide the others home. This is not battlefield rage, not drunken cruelty, not a story invented centuries later to make an emperor sound monstrous. It is policy. It is calculation. It is Basil II turning pain into strategy and terror into statecraft. History remembers him as the Bulgar Slayer. But titles like that are never born in an afternoon. They are forged over decades through humiliation, obsession, discipline, and a kind of patience so cold it stops looking human. To understand why Basil ordered 15,000 men, sent back blind to their king, you have to begin much earlier, before the triumphs, before the fear, before the empire trembled at his name. You have to begin with a boy in silk who discovered that silk does not stop arrows, that purple robes do not command loyalty, and that an emperor without power is just a hostage with a crown. The year is 976 after Christ. The Byzantine Empire still carries the shadow of Rome, but only the shadow. Its court is swollen with eunuchs, aristocrats, schemers, and career generals who treat the young emperor as decoration. Basil grows up surrounded by luxury and trapped inside it. He signs papers placed in front of him. Men bow to him in the palace and ignore him outside it. On the northern frontier, another force is rising. Samuel of Bulgaria is not a court ornament. He is a field commander, a frontier predator, a man who understands land movement and pressure. While Basil is handled like a ceremonial child, Samuel tears at the Byzantine borders, piece by piece. Greece, Macedonia, Thessaly. Province by province, the empire weakens. Worse still, Basil begins to understand that the danger is not only outside the walls. Inside Constantinople, his own court is a nest of polished traitors. If he wants to survive, he cannot borrow authority from them. He must seize it himself. So in 986, still young and still raw, he makes the decision that makes the court laugh and the empire hold its breath. He decides to lead the army in person against Samuel. He gathers 30,000 men and marches toward Sertica, the logistical heart of Bulgarian resistance. Veteran officers warn him that the terrain is wrong, the supply lines exposed, the enemy ready. Basil ignores them. Pride is louder than caution in inexperienced rulers. He wants one clean victory to silence everyone who calls him a child. Instead, he walks into the furnace. For 20 days, the siege of Sertica goes nowhere. Byzantine assaults fail. Supplies weaken. Morale rots. Then, on August 17th in the year 986, the real blow falls at the gates of Trajan. The Byzantine army enters a narrow defile, a natural funnel of rock and death. Suddenly, the heights come alive. Arrows, stones, rolling boulders, noise so violent it seems to erase thought. Horses panic. Men crush one another, trying to turn inside too little space. Basil, who had come seeking glory, finds himself dragged out of disaster by a handful of Armenian guards forming a human wall around him. That day, he does not simply lose a battle. He loses an illusion. The boy who wanted quick fame dies in that pass. He rides back toward safety alive. But the thing that returns to Constantinople is harder, colder, and far more dangerous. There is no triumph waiting for him in the capital, no forgiving embrace, only contempt, whispers, and opportunity. His own generals rise against him. Civil war erupts. Basil stands boxed in Bulgarians. To the north, rebels; to the east, courtiers all around him waiting to see whether he will break. This is the pivot of his life. Many emperors are defeated in battle. Fewer are remade by it. Basil chooses remaking. He abandons palace softness, almost as if it were a disease. He swears off jewels, except when ritual demands them. He rejects banquets, luxury, ease, and even marriage. He trains with weapons until his hands bleed. He sells dynastic purity for survival and marries imperial legitimacy to raw military necessity by securing 6,000 northern warriors from Prince Vladimir of Kiev. These axe-bearing giants become the Varangian guardmen, whose loyalty is purchased outside the rot of Byzantine court politics. With them, Basil crushes his internal enemies one after another. The rebel generals are broken. Their heads are displayed. The throne is his at last, but that is not enough. He has learned something the court never understood. Power is not a costume. It is endurance sharpened by force. Once the blood dries in Constantinople, Basil turns north again toward Bulgaria and toward Samuel. But this time, he does not ride out as a youth hungry for one redeeming victory. He rides out as a man who has converted shame into fuel. The war changes shape. It will no longer be a campaign. It will be a long hunt. Basil no longer wants applause. He wants exhaustion, attrition, pressure without pause. He wants Samuel to age under pursuit. So when the year 101 arrives, Basil breaks one of the old rules of war. Winter no longer stops him. Snow no longer stops him. He marches through seasons when other kings withdraw to stone halls and fires. He crosses frozen rivers. He besieges fortresses under hail and sleet. He attacks before crops can be gathered, before levees can recover, before memory can cool. This is not just military innovation. It is psychological siege. Samuel, once the hunter in the mountains, begins to live as prey. Each season that should bring breathing space brings instead another Roman advance. Each fortress that should have held another year becomes another place under pressure. Bulgarian commanders begin to doubt. Basil bribes. Basil forges letters. Basil buys governors. He attacks not only walls, but trust. Slowly, the Bulgarian kingdom starts decaying from the inside, while still fighting from the outside. By the time the final phase opens, both men have become older versions of themselves. Samuel is no longer simply the giant on the frontier. He is a weary king trying to save a kingdom being tightened like a noose. Basil is no longer a humiliated boy or even merely a victorious emperor. He is a machine of persistence. Samuel knows Basil will come through the Struma Valley, so he prepares an answer designed to repeat the old miracle of the gates of Trajan. He orders a colossal wall built across the entire width of the valley, a fortification of wood and earth backed by towers and guarded by his best men. The message is clear: turn back or bleed here. Basil arrives on July 29th and sees exactly what Samuel has prepared. A frontal attack would be murder. His generals know it. The memory of 986 hangs over the camp like smoke. For a moment, it seems history might close in a circle and swallow Basil in the same kind of pass where it once rebuked him. He orders assaults anyway, and they fail. Men die under the wall. Frustration spreads through the camp. But unlike the Basil of 986, the man in this valley does not confuse refusal to retreat with refusal to think. He walks through the camp at night with sleepless eyes and understands the real rule. If the door is sealed, find the mountain. He summons his trusted general Inferus Zephyus. The mission is absurd. Take a detachment. Climb the Belisa range, not along roads because there are none. Not along paths because the enemy assumes no army can move there. Straight through dense forest, steep slopes near vertical rock under darkness, with isolation and death waiting if a single sentry sees them. Zephyus accepts. Under cover of night, his men begin to climb. It is not a march, it is a slow battle against terrain. Down below, Basil keeps the Bulgarians fixed forward with repeated pressure. Dawn breaks on the third day. The defenders crowd the wall, expecting another Roman failure. Then, from the crest behind them, comes a sound no Bulgarian in that valley is prepared to hear. Horns, screams, men where no men should exist. Zephyus comes crashing downhill into the Bulgarian rear like falling iron. Panic moves faster than orders. The wall loses its defenders for the seconds Basil needs. He roars the advance. The Byzantine army smashes through the front while Zephyus closes from behind. The Bulgarians are trapped between hammer and anvil, between the emperor they thought checked and the mountain they thought impossible. The line collapses. Then the army collapses. Then the kingdom begins to collapse with it. Men throw down weapons, flee, trample one another, surrender in masses. This is the Battle of Clydion, but to call it only a battle is too polite. It is the breaking of a spine. Samuel escapes. That is the tragedy. He escapes alive and believes for a few hours, perhaps, that life still leaves room for negotiation. Basil has taken thousands of prisoners. Surely he will ransom them. Surely war, however brutal, still retains its old customs. Samuel still thinks in the language of kings who trade captives, not in the language of Basil after 4 decades of hatred. Basil gives the order, not in sudden rage, not in a burst of battlefield fury. Calmly, methodically. 15,000 prisoners are divided into groups of 100. The work takes time. It takes iron. It takes fuel. It takes hands willing to obey something that even hardened soldiers may inwardly recoil from. Yet Basil does not blink, and when emperors do not blink, armies obey. 99 men in every 100 are blinded. The last is left one eye so he can guide the rest. Then Basil does something worse than killing them. He releases them. He points north and sends them back to Samuel. That is the genius and the obscenity of it. Dead men vanish. Blind men return. They eat. They weep. They occupy roads, homes, and futures. They become grief, made visible, a living burden carried into the heart of a nation. Basil is not sending captives home. He is sending a weapon. The march stretches 150 kilometers. Endless files of ruined men grasping shoulders in front of them, stumbling over stone, and each other guided by the half-blind, moving not like soldiers, but like the aftermath of judgment. When they finally appear before Samuel near his fortress, he thinks for one shattered instant that his army has returned alive. Then he sees the faces, or rather the absence where faces should still be whole. 15,000 soldiers made useless in a single act. 15,000 mouths that can no longer defend, plow, or rebuild. Samuel, the great lion of the Balkans, understands the message instantly. This was not defeat. This was national crippling. The shock crushes him where steel had failed. He suffers a massive stroke and dies 2 days later. Basil has killed him without touching him. Any other ruler might have stopped there. Enemy king dead. Great victory achieved. Frontiers secured. The capital ready to celebrate. Basil does not stop because Basil by now no longer fights merely men. He fights possibilities. Samuel's death is not enough. Bulgaria is not just a king. It is a state, an aristocracy, a memory of resistance, a political idea that still has fortresses, sons, cousins, and ambitions. So the war continues. Samuel's son, Gabriel Radomir, takes the crown. He is younger, stronger, and burning with revenge. For a moment, it seems Bulgaria may still resist. Basil changes methods. Less frontal violence, more corruption. Gold travels where catapults pause. Secret messages go out to frightened nobles who have seen what Basil does to enemies who stand together. Then Basil finds the weak joint inside the royal family itself. Ivan Vladislav, cousin to Gabriel, survivor of older family purges man with enough grievance to turn into a weapon. Gabriel once spared his life. That mercy becomes the knife that opens Bulgaria from within. On a hunt near Lake Ostrovo, away from guards, away from ceremony, Ivan stabs Gabriel and kills him, then destroys the heir to secure the throne. After that, he writes to Basil offering submission and alliance. A more conventional emperor might have accepted. Basil does not want a vassal. He wants finality. Treason is useful to him only up to the point where steel can take over. So he invades again. Ivan realizes too late that he traded blood for nothing. One city after another falls. Nobles defect. Keys change hands. The kingdom empties out from the top. In February, desperate for a victory that might cleanse his stained rule, Ivan marches toward the coastal city of Dreum. He dies there whether by dual assassination or fearful legend hardly matters. What matters is the effect. With Ivan dead, Bulgarian resistance does not organize around another heir. It evaporates. Basil advances toward Ohrid and finds not hardened defenses but open gates. The widow of Ivan Vladislav comes out to meet him. The boyars, who had once butchered Roman armies in mountain passes, now fall at his feet and kiss his red boots. Basil stands amid surrender and receives the thing he had been building toward for 40 years. Bulgaria disappears from the map. The Byzantine frontier returns to the Danube. He has done what no emperor in generations managed to do, yet victory has made him no softer. If anything, it has stripped him further down to steel. When Basil returns to Constantinople, the city erupts. The Golden Gate opens. Streets are covered in flowers and rosemary. Incense thickens the air. Hundreds of thousands shout his name. He rides a white horse, wears the imperial diadem, and looks like a living answer to Roman decline. But the eyes behind the ceremony are not grateful, not dazzled, not relieved. They are cold, because while Basil spent 40 years sleeping on the ground with soldiers eating hard bread and freezing on the frontier, the aristocracy in Constantinople fed on the empire from within. Peasant soldiers lost land, great families dodged taxes, the rich bought up the farms that once supported the military class. Basil knows Bulgaria was only one war. The deeper war has always been inside the empire itself, between the state that must feed armies and the elites who treat the empire as an orchard to strip. So, almost immediately, he turns from military violence to administrative violence. He drafts laws like weapons. The most famous is the Allenanian. If a peasant cannot pay his taxes, his rich neighbor must pay them for him. It is not elegant, it is a hammer. The court explodes in outrage. Basil does not argue. He does not negotiate. He reminds them without needing to say it plainly that the Varangian guard waits outside and that he has spent a lifetime teaching powerful men what happens when they confuse imperial patience with imperial weakness. He tours Anatolia not as guest, but as inspector. He digs up old property claims. If a noble cannot prove the legality of an estate, Basil confiscates it and returns it. He arrests Eustathios Malenos, one of the richest men in the East, after first letting the man display his obscene wealth in a banquet meant to impress the emperor. Basil sees the gold, the servants the cultivated excess, and decides the burden of such wealth will now become the state's relief. Lands, cattle, treasure, all swallowed back into imperial need. He destroys aristocratic fortunes not with cavalry, but with paperwork sharpened into terror. The people love him. Soldiers worship him. The rich wait for him to die. And there lies the fatal weakness hidden beneath all his victories. Basil is so complete as a ruler that he leaves no second version of himself behind. No son. No trained replacement with equal authority and equal fear. He has spent so long being father to the empire that he forgot to father an heir. In old age, still hungry for action, he begins planning one last great enterprise, the reconquest of Sicily, perhaps even the reopening of Rome itself as an imperial horizon. The fleet gathers. Veterans sharpen blades. The world braces for one final campaign by the man who had already crushed Bulgaria and humbled the great families. Then time, the one enemy Basil never defeated, enters the room. In December of the year 1, as the invasion fleet waits in gray winter water, Basil falls ill. Not dramatically, not gloriously. Simply the collapse of a body that had lived too long at the edge of endurance. On December 15th, the Bulgar slayer dies. Even his burial rejects softness. He refuses the imperial tombs of silk emperors and asks to be laid instead in the Hebdomon, the military ground outside the walls where he can rest among soldiers rather than courtiers. Then the machine he built begins to fail almost immediately. The throne passes to his brother Constantine VII, a man shaped not by campaigns, but by palaces, games, wines, and ease. Basil leaves behind 200,000 pounds of gold, in the treasury enough to underwrite a century of imperial strength if wisely used. Constantine sees not security but pleasure. He opens the palace. The nobles return. The Allenanion is repealed. With a single act, the peasant tax base and military backbone Basil tried to preserve begin dissolving again. Free soldiers become tenants. The army becomes increasingly mercenary. Competent generals are dismissed, blinded, or exiled because weak rulers fear strong servants more than real enemies. Drinking companions and palace creatures rise in their place. The great invasion fleet never sails. Sicily is left where it lies. 3 years are enough to begin undoing decades. When Constantine dies, he leaves no son either. Then the empire becomes a stage for court marriages, weak husbands, decorative rulers, and slow decay. While Constantinople still shines, a new sound grows in the east: Seljuk horses. "46 years after Basil's death, the test comes. Manzikert, August of the year 171. The empire still looks immense on maps, but maps lie. The body beneath the purple has already begun to rot. Emperor Romanos IV Diogenes tries desperately to recover what Basil preserved and his successors squandered. He is a soldier in a court of plotters married into the throne out of necessity, trying to command an army that is no longer a Roman instrument, but a patchwork of Franks, Turks, Pechenegs, mercenaries, and poorly prepared levies. Across from him stands Alp Arslan, leader of the Seljuk Turks, not a bureaucratic emperor, but a nomadic war chief commanding speed, cohesion, and purpose. Romanos divides his forces. Some vanish before the main action even begins. He enters the field weakened. Still, he advances. Through the day, the Turks retreat, shoot feint, and pull him farther from safety. At sunset, Romanos makes the correct military decision. He orders an orderly withdrawal. And that is where the rot inside the empire reveals itself fully. The reserve, which should protect the retreat, is commanded by Andronikos Doukas, political enemy of the emperor. Instead of covering the maneuver, Doukas orders withdrawal and spreads the lie that Romanos is dead. The army collapses not because Seljuk arrows are somehow supernatural, but because betrayal inside the command structure opens the door. Romanos fights on foot after his horse falls, is captured, treated with a strange mixture of dignity and political utility by Alp Arslan, then released only to be overthrown, captured and blinded by his own countrymen. The treaty dies with him. Anatolia opens. The Turks do not come merely to raid, they come to stay. Within years, the empire loses the body that once fed its army. Basil II had blinded 15,000 Bulgarians and secured the Danube. But his real tragedy was larger than cruelty. He built a machine so centralized, so dependent on the force of one will, that when that will vanished, the empire itself went blind. That is why Basil's story refuses to sit still as simple triumph. Yes, he broke Bulgaria. Yes, he restored frontiers. Yes, he filled the treasury and terrified enemies. But he also concentrated so much power in his own hands, crushed so many alternative centers of strength, and left succession so empty that the state he saved could not long survive the absence of the man who saved it. He spent his life making sure no one outside the empire could threaten Rome. In the end, Rome was undone, not first by Bulgarians, Arabs, or Turks, but by court greed, aristocratic revenge, military decay, and the vacuum that follows a giant when the giant leaves no equal behind. The most savage irony of all is that the man who sent blinded soldiers back to destroy Samuel from a distance left behind an empire that would itself stumble into darkness after his death. When Basil closed the eyes of Bulgaria, he believed he was securing Rome forever. Instead, when his own eyes closed, the empire began losing its sight. And so the two lines meet at the end, 15,000 blinded prisoners in the mountains of Bulgaria and a blinded empire at Manzikert half a century later. Victims and victors joined at last by the same old truth. An emperor can terrify enemies. He can fill treasuries. He can widen borders. He can even look like Rome reborn. But if he leaves behind no durable strength, only personal dominance, then all he has really done is postpone the funeral. Basil II rests in the Hebdomon, where he wished to lie among soldiers. Above him, the world he defended begins to slip away. The Roman eagle does not crash in one day. It circles lower and lower until at last only vultures remain.